Welcome to Eudaemonia, the podcast that is all about flourishing. Plug in, relax, and get ready for the goodness as we explore the traits and practices that can help you thrive in life. With your host, Kim Forrester.
According to the celebrated scientist George Land, almost every 5-year-old child on the planet is a creative genius. By the age of 10, only 30% of children are still creatively gifted. And by the time we're adults, only 2% of us are innovatively, imaginatively, and creatively brilliant. Adam Haddrick is a renowned Australian photographer with a clientele that includes the crème de la crème of global celebrities, corporations, and elite sportsmen and women. His work features in media all over the world, and he's produced iconic portraits for personalities such as Daniel Craig, Jamie Oliver, and Australian cricket legend Ricky Ponting. Now, it's my absolute pleasure to be joined by Adam today to talk about the power of creativity and to explore how we can each reclaim our creative genius and unlock this incredible key to well-being, happiness, and fulfillment. Hi there, Adam.
Hi, how you going?
Thanks so much for joining me here on the Eudaemonia podcast.
Pleasure, can't wait.
Excellent. Now, by the time you were a teenager, Adam, you were studying acting and you were actively seeking a career in that area. What was it about the creative arts that called to you and, let's face it, enabled you to forego what would be considered more stereotypical careers for young Australian men?
Well, for me, it started in primary school in grade 3 it was, so I would have been about 8 years old. And a primary school teacher brought in a cardboard box. I'm assuming she was a drama teacher. She brought in a cardboard box and had everyone standing around in a circle around the box. And it was an empty box, and everyone had to walk up to this box and pull something out. And it was an exercise on imagination. And from then on, I was hooked on this drama, as it was back then. And I started doing it after school, and to the embarrassment, it was almost like I couldn't tell people I was doing drama back then, being a young Aussie male. And I remember even being on a bus and one of the other boys said, "Do you do drama?" And another friend said, "He's a drummer, not a drama, it's drummer." And I went, "Yeah, I'm a drummer." And he goes, "Oh, cool, you have to play us a song." So it was one of those subjects that was always a bit like the Billy Elliot. It was, you might as well do ballet. So, but I just fell in love with it. And from a very early age, so I did it at school and then carried it on through to secondary school and started performing at secondary school. And my dream back then was to be an actor. And then I ended up going to university to do drama. And I think when I look back at it, I think it was just a way of being, I was an extrovert, I was very loud. And I think from every school report from prep right through to my end of secondary school, it had the same thing. Adam is an attention seeker. Adam, I basically wouldn't shut up. And so I think there was just an extension of doing that. It was just a legitimate way to do that. And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the imaginative process right from an early age.
So let's talk about the university. Once you went to university, you actually did a double degree. So you took on acting and photography. Now, the mechanics of both of those practices are actually quite different, but you spoke in a previous interview about how the essence of them were the same. What do you mean by that? What is the core concept of both photography and acting that you find to be similar?
Yes. So I started off, so I went to university on I auditioned and entered university on an acting scholarship of 3 years or degree. And then it was my mum who said, "Look, maybe you should stay and do the 4th year, which is the Bachelor of Education, to be a teacher. And once again, your parents telling you should have something to fall back on." And then while at college, I thought I'd pick up a second major in my studies, and I just sort of basically looked through the list and went, "Oh, photography. Oh God, how hard could that be?" So I picked up photography, but I just fell in love with it. I had actually, I did it in year 11 and 12 at school. And I found them actually both very similar. They're all about the way you see the world, the way you perceive the world, opening yourself up to the world with all your senses. Especially as a drama student, we do these exercises which were based around hearing and your 5 senses: hearing, sight, touch, taste, and smell. And like one exercise in particular where we had to sit in a circle and everyone had to come in with a smell in a container. And, you know, some people would bring Vegemite, some would bring off fish, some would bring candy, you know, and each smell is designed to evoke an emotion and a feeling in you. And thus, you know, when you're presented with a written word, you can rely on these feelings or try and tap into them via those 5 senses that you're open to. And at the time I thought, God, what a lot of crap. But it's a bit the same with photography. As soon as you open your mind to the way you see, you never see the same ever again. And that's not supposed to sound like it's because anyone can do that, but you are certainly more heightened in your awareness of your surroundings and how you see. And ever since I've been a photographer, everything becomes the way light falls, the way shadows, everything becomes perspective, line, texture, everything I see. I see the world through a lens now. I see things in macro, I see things wide, and you just never lose that. And it just, it really does take over. So I think, you know, the main similarities that they both have is telling a story, and how you tell that story and how you make others feel. And, so that's how I found them both very similar.
I love that, because from you just describing, you know, your experience with both photography and acting, what I detect is that creativity is not just about expression, but it's actually about how you take in the world around you.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like if you imagine, like it both relates to communicating a feeling, and in a photograph, or whether you're doing a play or a performance, that's your main goal, is you're trying to communicate something to a third person. And so they're very similar like that. And you know, they both play off each other. But I've noticed, even with my photography, I've taken the drama background into my photography. It always tends to sort of, all of a sudden, have a little slight kick to the left, or, you know, quite dramatic sort of kick to the left. So if I'm told to do a normal portrait, all of a sudden I'll make the blokes tie round, or do, you know, so there's always that dramatic element to the photography that just comes naturally from the performance side. And I guess just some of my strength when I get employed is because I utilise those techniques to try and get people to, I try and get a little bit more out of people, whereas it might be a straight portrait, but they'll say, I'll get at them because you'll be able to convince someone to do anything. So, and you do employ those directing techniques and those things you learnt at college to try and break people down, or not break them down, but you try and get people to open up. And there are things you employ to try and do that I learnt from the drama side of college. So they do go hand in hand and have worked in shaping my style, I suppose.
Let's expand that concept a little bit further, because you said that you find that you can bring your drama into your photography. How does your photography, or your creativity in general, because I know you also paint and do art as well, how does that expand into other facets of your life? So research shows that highly creative children actually grow into highly innovative adults, and they also have exceptional problem-solving skills. Now, you're obviously a highly creative adult. So do you find that your creative outlets, your creative profession, has benefits in other areas of your life, such as in the way that you solve problems or approach problems, or even in the way that you approach social situations?
Look, but being creative, I'm a very inquisitive person. I've always enjoyed the social element of my job. That's why I'm a people photographer. I don't necessarily go out and shoot landscapes or still objects or, you know, buildings or anything. I'm very much into people. So my job has allowed me that ability to interact with all types of people, and I like to think that's my greatest skill. I can literally talk to anyone and genuinely enjoy that conversation and meeting those types of people. So they do spill into each other. It's a way of living, really, and how you engage with the world. And like I said before, it's how you see the world and how you put that into a visual interpretation, being a picture or a performance, etc. So whether I problem solve any, my wife would say no, but I do see differently, and I do look left of centre, and I do walk around something and ask questions. And I guess that's the way it sort of spills into my life. Like my wife she works in a government job, and it's probably there's a straight answer to everything, and I'll always question something. I say, well, why can't they just, that seems so obvious. Wouldn't they just, oh my God, government, oh God, they're straight, aren't they? So there is ways that where your life is consumed by the way you see and how you see, and that's the same for everyone. I'm not sure maybe the creativity does make a bearing on it, but I think that's the same for everyone.
And as I mentioned in my intro, studies have shown that 98% of 5-year-olds are creative geniuses. But nearly all of us lose that brilliance by the time we're adults. Was there something in your childhood that allowed you to retain and even enhance your creative spark?
I think it comes back to the importance of play. Like, when we're kids and we play and we pick up a stick and it becomes a wand or it becomes a sword, and, that importance of cognitive learning and imagination and creativity, I was always in me, and I don't know if that's just part of just your DNA, whether you're just born with that, like, the way you're born an extrovert or an introvert, and whether, for me, it's been lucky that I've been able to carry it on to adulthood, and even to this day, I've never ever felt like I've gone to work. It's kind of weird, but I've never woke up and thought I'm going to work. It's kind of like an extension of your being, where just that creative passion to drive and to create something creative and to, at the end of the day, finish with a photograph in your hand that represents that day's work and your thought process. And I think from a young age, I think it's built in you and it's nurtured, and some people, like you said, some people lose it for whatever reason. I don't think everyone loses it. I think people just occupied by their lives and they get on with work, and they maybe get pushed into areas of life where they wouldn't necessarily have chosen. I make the example of my uncle, he's a bricklayer, and he's been bricklaying for 40 years or something, and all of a sudden he secretly went and entered a sculptural contest on the Mornington Peninsula, and he won first prize, $2,000. He didn't tell anyone. He went and gathered all these metal objects around the yard on the weekend and welded. He was in this shed welding them, and his wife was wondering what the hell he was doing, and he secretly went and entered this competition. And so people have this creative ability, but they suppress it, or they don't allow themselves the opportunity. And he was so embarrassed when people found out he'd won this, and I rang him and said, "That is fantastic! How awesome!" And I think a lot of people are like that, given the chance to express themselves creatively, they would definitely find it and definitely have it, and definitely enjoy it, more to the point, because it's supposed to be enjoyable, and certainly is for me.
Let's go back to childhood creativity, because you are a father. Do you parent your son in such a way that inspires, encourages, and enables creativity in him?
Oh, definitely, and the creative also brings an emotional intelligence to the things you do as well. So I definitely try and nurture it, and it's especially these days where everything is so focused around a screen, and as much as you try and suppress that screen time, like a lot of parents are battling with at the moment, I think the realities are the future is going to be, children who are engaged so much with technology that it's very hard to fight now. And, and for me personally, it's about finding that time and really making that conscious effort to realise, the growth that is needed for children in allowing them to express their imagination and their creativity, and not only good for cognitive learning, but just getting them outside and it could be anything. It could be collecting leaves and just the very basic things. Like I try and just do simple things, around, role playing and simple things around drawing on a box and making something, or, just finding simple things to engage in a creative and an imaginative side of your brain. And it's amazing your response you get from kids, and as much as sometimes it takes me half an hour to get the phone out of his hands to actually do that, but, and it's a bit of kicking and screaming and crying when he's there. And most kids, when they're there and they're engaged with it, they're fantastic. And, when his mates come over, I make a conscious effort to get them all together and go outside and try and do something that makes them engage with that side of their brain, and it's such fun to watch.
I see the immediate link there back to play. You were saying that you played a lot in your childhood. The first time you tried drama, it was just all play.
Yeah.
And maybe not just for our children, but for ourselves. Maybe that's the point, is for us to learn to insert a little bit more play into our lives, because in that play, the creativity naturally flows.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everyone should have that ability to go back and imagine, I mean, it's very hard. Everyone gets busy, and, I tell my wife this all the time, and she rolls her eyes at me and thinks I'm going off on a tangent. But it's true. And then we can do it on the most basic of levels too. Like even if you're inspired by something, inspiration can come from anywhere and everywhere. It can come from something written. It can come from nature. It can come from someone who's done a deed that inspires you. It can come from art. It can come from music, obviously. So, anyone can be inspired, and inspiration can make people creative. Like, it can inspire you to create, and creation and creativity can come on any level, multiple levels. And maybe it's my uncle who picked up pieces of metal in his backyard and welded them. And my sister bought me a glass blowing course for Christmas, and I looked at it and I said, what's this, a glass blowing course? She goes, yeah, you're creative. I thought you'd like that. And I went, oh, for God's sake, glass blowing. I said, God, I'm creative. But so I went off to this glass blowing course. It was a full day, and by the end of the day, I wanted to be a glass blower. I came home and said to my wife, I love this. I just absolutely love it. And it was just being in that space where you're creating. And, it's also, creativity is supposed to bring a joy. And it was certainly joyful, and sharing the experience with others that were there, and it's just stepping out of the day to day. And maybe it's just maybe in being creative, you're just finding a way to bring a peace and a happiness to your life. And maybe that's what creativity is for some. But, on the other side of that, creativity has it's down. I do it, but there's a difference between creativity as a hobby and creativity as a living. Mine's a living. Mm-hmm. And for days, sometimes you can go into very dark places with your creativity. Some days I can't see. I go on a job and I just can't see. I literally, things go black, and I can't see a shot, and I can't connect with this person, and you just have an off day, and you beat yourself up, and then you beat yourself up. And I had an exhibition last year, and it was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life, where when all of a sudden you're being judged, you're putting stuff on a wall and you're being judged by it, and I'm a very confident person, and I've never been shy, but all of a sudden, God, an exhibition, I was water beforehand. I thought, oh my God. And, it really is like, so you have that self-doubt sets in, and you go, oh, maybe it's all crap, and no one's going to respond to it, and all this effort you put into traveling to these remote places to get these shots. And so there's that. And I think that's a lot for all creators, whether it be music or people who write or paint. There's always this self-doubt that's always lingering behind you, where you just don't feel you're good enough, or I went for a job recently, and another photographer got the job, and I saw it, and I went into a day of depression because I saw it, and he did a ripper job, and I thought, I'm crap. I'm never going to work again, and so you're forever battling, and that's when your creativity becomes that beast behind you, and when it's not always the happy place that most people would assume it is, where and that's my difference. All I'm saying is there is a hobby and there's a living out of it. And a living, you can, a hobby should be joyful, and a living, it is joyful, but you do have the opposite. It's not all just skipping and rainbows.
But
ice cream.
What strikes me there, though, is that inspiration obviously plays a huge part in creativity. So in those dark moments where you say everything goes black and you can't see, something must pull you out. Do you find yourself inspired somehow to get on with the shoot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the realities of doing it commercially is you've got to pull yourself out pretty quickly. But inspiration comes from anywhere, like I said before, anywhere and everywhere. Like, you can be inspired by the most simplest things. And sometimes, allowing yourself the ability to slow down sometimes, and it's so fast there, I'm sitting, we're in Singapore at the moment, so sitting in a hawker market and just watching the world and looking at moments and really, and comes back to teaching yourself to see. And sometimes you just got to look at the bigger picture, and you know, you do have bad days with the camera, like any job. You know, you can. It's the same as anyone who works in an office job. You have days where you're just off, and you know, and you've got to be able to pick yourself up pretty quickly and realise that the next job's going to be better and bigger, and you actually find yourself working harder to make it bigger and better.
So I want to flip that on its head then. I wonder if many people in this world are seeking inspiration. There's nothing better than feeling inspired about life, and it actually increases our sense of well-being and happiness. Do you think that it's possible to have inspiration without creativity?
Oh, definitely. Like you can walk into amazing buildings, and you know, when we travel and we see these places, and you know, there's those moments that take your breath away when you first see Petra in Jordan or Angkor Wat, you know, with the physicality of the space, and you take a step back and you go, wow. And you know, and that's where, you know, inspiration comes to all people in all forms. I don't think they go hand in hand. I don't have to be inspired to be creative, and it certainly helps. But I think the inspiration drives the creativity when you do. You know, you can be like, I can see a great photograph and go, right, oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna do better than that. You know, it drives you to be a better, and it should, and that's what inspiration is. And but you can be inspired and not necessarily be creative.
So I'm going to take away your professional creativity, and let's talk about what you do to have fun, to play on the side. And sometimes, of course, your job is also play. But a New Zealand study actually shows that being creative one day quite literally makes you happy the next.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
New Zealand does a lot of studies.
Yeah, that we do. There's not much to do down there. We research stuff. But do you find that doing something creative for you, do you find that helps you lift out of dark moods or dark holes?
Oh, definitely. And that's what it should be. Like, you know, you shouldn't be forced to be creative. Creativity is supposed to bring joy, it's supposed to bring a sense of well-being, a happiness. And, you know, for me it is. And, you know, that's not to say all creatives are like that. Some people who paint go into very dark spaces to get to those paintings, and you know, so there's all different forms. But for me, I write as well. Like, you know, I'll write a stand-up comedy sketch just like that, just for fun, you know. And I'll walk into the bedroom at midnight and wake my wife, say, listen to this. And she'll just look at me and say, have you finished? And I'll go, yep, and she'll thank you. And turn the light out, and I'll go back giggling to And I think it's just an exercise. It's, you know, sometimes it's just a brain exercise to get the creative juices flowing and to start thinking. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, you know, all those sorts of outlets, you know, I do purely for enjoyment, you know, and it's, and like I said before, and the ability to go to work and not look at it as work and never think of it as work.
Even on those dark days.
Oh, look, yeah. Even those dark days, it's, you know, we're not brain surgeons, we're not saving lives. We're taking photographs, and no one dies by a photograph, or in the commercial arena. There's so, you know, I also keep it pretty real and realise it's pretty lucky to be able to, you know, like you're meeting fresh people every day, and for me, I've met just all walks of life, and you know, I've met royalty all the way down to crocodile farmers, and there's something that you get from every single person you meet on all levels and all different parts of society and cultures, and there's something very rewarding in that, and how it shapes you as well and how you see the world.
If we're seeking to be more creative, is it worth hanging around with creative people? Do you find that you are more inspired, more creative when you hang out with people who are, you know, resonating on a similar level?
Right. It's real. Reminds me of being in the 70s, sitting around in a room and humming. Not necessarily. You know, I think the perfect example is on a Friday night in Melbourne, I have a little local cafe / bar I go to, and it's made up of all walks of life. And there's a high court judge, there's a professional footballer, there's gardeners, there's people who make wine, and no one cares who you are. And everyone, and it's there where you learn that everyone has a flair for creativity, and I think everyone loves creativity, but people are attracted to certain forms of that. Like, some people love music. Oh, you got to listen to this. This is fantastic. Some people find it in, you got to read this article, you got to read this book, you've got to,
But you're talking about hanging out with, all sorts of different folk, and it sort of brings me right back to one of the very first comments you made. Literally, that creativity, it starts with just taking in the world around you, obviously. So just taking in the people around you as they are, as they present themselves, whether they're creatives or bricklayers, right? Yeah.
And the important thing for me as a creative, and especially when you do it as a job, is you have to have a project that you do just for the passion of it, and I try and do a project every year that's just for me, and it's just about me and the camera, and not the camera and I, and not about a room full of clients and art directors and models or performers and stylists and makeup artists and assistants and everyone else who's on a crew. It's just about you and the camera and how you see. So I think it's really important to, and it's got to be something you're doing with a passion. So last year I went and did a project in the most remote parts of Australia, an Aboriginal project, and it just takes so long to get to, and it takes so long to get permission and 4 levels of government to be allowed there, and it's a very personal project, and you do it out of love, and it's literally, if you don't do it from the right space, you're just not going to connect to it. And I've been out there half a dozen times working on this, and it just gets easier every time you start seeing it differently. And even if I was to go now, it would change from the last time I went, and all of a sudden I think I have a clearer picture of doing it, and it's only through that experience of doing it you get better at it. Because the one thing about acting and photography is you can't get better from reading about them in books. They're just things that have to be done by failing, and getting better by that failure. And you can read as many books as you want about photography or acting, but until you're engaging with the physical being of being on stage or being in front of a camera, or in the photography sense of actually holding a camera and looking through a lens, and that's how you learn, and that's how you get better at it. And for me, these personal projects allow me to redefine my style. They allow me to go back to just enjoying holding that camera again.
I've got one final question for you, Adam, and it's a question that I ask all of my guests on the Eudaemonia podcast. Can you offer my listeners a morning reminder? So this can be a practice or a ritual or even a mantra, something that my listeners can do each day to inspire themselves into greater creativity.
I think slow down. It's amazing how with the pace that we live our lives now, just allowing yourself the opportunity to see and experience, and sometimes that means stepping out of your comfort zone, but allowing yourself to do something creative, and maybe doing it with someone, and do it for enjoyment, do it for the right reason. Don't be forced to be creative, but do it out of, think back to a time when you were young or creative, or you did experience, or and it could be anything. There's so many vast different ways to be creative. But I think enjoying it and allowing yourself the moment to be, and that comes down to slowing down. Just that's my one thing. Every now and then I catch myself out, and it's just it's almost like resetting and just go and do the most simplest of tasks that bring joy. And I connect the two, the creativity and the joy, in the same sentence. And, it's not for everyone. Like, some people, I tell my brother's, I was a large family, and he was the mechanic who raced motorbikes and cars, and all his mates would gather around the engine. But finding any sort of joy out of, for him, it might have been painting the race car is a form of creativity. So there are in those people who say, or don't see any value in the arts or any sort of, there are ways of connecting to it on an enjoyable level if you allow yourself.
I completely agree.
And if you do it with someone else, all the better.
Adam, if people want to come and see your amazing images, where do they find you?
I'll be appearing at the shopping. No, it's adamhaddrick.com. That's ADAMHADDRICK.com. And there's a little bit of advertising, editorial, portrait, travel, bit of everything. And
cool. And there's an Instagram account to come at some point in the future.
It's to come. It's coming.
It has been an absolute pleasure sitting here with you and chatting about creativity. For me, creativity is just it's a cornerstone of my life and my existence. And so it's such a pleasure to share this space with you.
Really enjoyed it.
Take care. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Kim.
The American businessman D. Hock once said, "Make an empty space in any corner of your mind and creativity will instantly fill it." You've been listening to the Eudaemonia podcast. If you'd like to learn more about how to live a truly flourishing life, please subscribe and check out eudaemoniapod.com for more inspiring episodes. I'm Kim Forrester. Until next time, be well, be good to yourself, and create without limitation.